All right, gang. So this is the first video in our unit on religions. So in this unit, we're basically going to look at how religion affects people's lives. You can see the SOLs here. We're going to describe the beliefs, writings, traditions, customs, all that good stuff. Most of that is stuff that you did in world history, or I'm sorry, world geography, and this really is no different than what you did in world geography. Just a little bit more focus on where they were in 1500, and then we're going to focus again on where religions were later on and today. So first religion we're going to look at is Judaism. Judaism, as most of us know, is centered largely in Palestine, which is right here, but there's also a smattering of Jewish people throughout Eastern Europe, right here, and throughout Europe and North America. Now, in the 1500s, most Jewish people lived here in Europe, and this is where the most Jewish people were concentrated in and around 1500. So, a little bit of Jewish history. It began with Abraham's covenant with God. Now, Abraham's covenant with God was essentially a promise, okay? And it was a promise that Yahweh, this one particular, there were all sorts of gods, by the way. There were all sorts of gods that people all around Palestine or the Middle East worshipped at the time. Well, one particular God, Yahweh, went to Abraham and he said, look, follow me, only me, and I will be your man. I'll be your guy, and I'll protect you, okay? Yahweh was the one that said he would protect him. So Abraham said, okay, that's a pretty good deal. So Abraham promised that him and all of his followers, all of his family would follow him. So they wandered around Canaan, or what's today Palestine, or in the Middle East, and they wandered around there. Well, eventually, Abraham, and you see there the story of Abraham and Isaac, the picture there. Abraham eventually and his followers eventually moved to Egypt, and in Egypt they were enslaved. Okay, so they were made slaves. They were basically made to work for the pharaohs and for the Egyptian king. Okay, so generations went on, and eventually a Jewish boy was born named Moses. Now Moses, his mother couldn't keep him, so as the story goes in the Bible, she put him in a basket of reeds, put him off in the water, and lo and behold, Pharaoh's daughter got him. Okay, well, Moses is important to Jewish tradition for three reasons. One, he leads Jewish people out of Egypt and what's known as the Exodus or the leaving. Okay. Secondly, he climbs Mount Sinai, and on Mount Sinai he speaks directly to God. Moses is the first major prophet of Judaism, and because he is the major prophet of Judaism, he then delivers to Jewish people their rules of life. Okay, and he delivers the Ten Commandments. There are also actually a lot more than the Ten Commandments there. A lot more rules that Jewish people are supposed to follow. But that's what he gets up on Mount Sinai because he speaks directly from God and he comes down and brings it. So the holy book or religious text of Judaism is called the Torah. And the Torah is composed of three parts. Okay, the first part is the Pentateuch, and this is basically a history of Abraham, okay, and the history of all his lineage and his family. All right, and the way I want you to look at that is it's basically the first books of the Old Testament. And Judaism and the Torah, rather, are really similar to the Christian Old Testament. Okay, it's basically, like I said, Abraham's history. The second part is the Mishnah. The Mishnah is the writing of the prophets. Again, we have, or Christians have, most of this in their Old Testament as well. And third part is the Talmud. The Talmud are newer writings of Judaism and newer writings of the Jewish tradition. So a little bit more. So once they began to settle in Palestine, this area right here, the Jewish people, the tribes of Israel, begin to settle in from 1250 BC to about 1050 BC. They really settle over and take over land, and they form the nation of Israel. Okay, and they begin to unify themselves under one king. And one of the unifying characteristics of it is that they all worship the same God. And one of the things that's unique about this is that they are monotheistic. Now, they're not the first. Jewish people aren't the first monotheistic religion. That's called Zoroastrianism, is one of the first monotheistic religions. But it's really different because it's what's known as ethical monotheism. They take their laws and they apply it to their life. And they believe that their religion should dictate exactly how they should live and exactly how their government should run. And so their government is really kind of a combination of religion and social order all rolled into one. Their capital is their holy city of Jerusalem, and we'll look a little bit into what makes that important in a while. Okay, well, they build this temple. Okay, when they were wandering around with Moses, they believed that something called the Ark of the Covenant was where God resided, where he was. Okay, so they carried around the ark. Well, once they got into Jerusalem, they built a big temple, and that temple was where they worshipped, and that was the center of all Jewish life in the entire country. Well, in 586, the Solomon's temple was destroyed for the first time. It was destroyed by the Babylonians, who lived right here, which is basically in Baghdad today. Okay, and this began what's known as the diaspora. The diaspora is the spreading out of people, specifically in this case, Jewish people throughout the world. And this first diaspora, the Jewish people were all deported to Babylon, and they were essentially forced into slavery. Okay, so they were all shipped into slavery, and they were made to go here into Babylon to work. Well, a couple of generations went on, and they were allowed to return back, or several generations rather, and they were allowed to return back to Jerusalem. Well, once they were back into Jerusalem, they built a second temple. And that second Solomon's temple was destroyed in 70 AD. The second temple was destroyed, and that really ended Jewish settlement in Palestine. And it was at this point that Jewish people are now spread throughout all of Europe and begins their spreading throughout the world. So from about 70 AD, from then until 1940 something, okay, 1946, there was no Jewish homeland in the Middle East. There wasn't a country that was specifically made for people of the Jewish faith. Okay, and because of that, because they were spread out throughout the world, in order to keep their religious teachings alive and around the world, they had to have rabbis. Rabbis are just another word for teachers, okay? Rabbis are those that carried out the Jewish faith throughout the world to teach it to other people, other Jewish people, to keep their traditions carry on. So what are some of those beliefs and customs? One phrase that we can kind of understand or use to understand Judaism, as well as really any other religion, monotheistic religions especially, is I keep the Lord always before me. Essentially, this says that all of life is an act of worship. Everything you do in your life should be meant to honor God, and many of the daily customs are meant to do that. For example, Jewish person is supposed to pray 3 times a day, once in the morning, once at midday or around midday, and once in the evening. The holy day or the worship day is the Sabbath day. Now in Judaism, as with some religious, Christian denominations, it is Saturday. Saturday is a day of complete and total rest. No work is supposed to be done on the Sabbath day. All work is done in preparation on Friday. Jewish church services or temple services are on Friday evening. And then that day, Sunday, can be a complete day of rest and honoring God at home. Throughout the whole year, just as in many Christian churches, the whole Torah, specifically the Pentateuch, is read throughout the year. There's a cycle, it's called a liturgical cycle, where they read through the whole thing over the course of the year. Their religion also dictates their diet, and that's really kind of different than Christianity. All foods must be kosher, and there's a couple of things that this means. One, they have to be blessed by a Jewish priest. Okay, that's part of it. 2, there are certain dietary restrictions. They can't eat unclean meat. Pork, you can't eat pork. Shellfish, you cannot eat. Even combining certain things on the plate, like dairy products and beef rather, you can't combine into one. So there are certain dietary restrictions that Jewish people must follow as well. Some of the holy days and festivals. In the spring, Jewish people have Passover. In the fall, you have the Jewish New Year, or Rosh Hashanah, and part of that celebration, that week-long celebration, is Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. It's the where Jewish people, it's really Jewish New Year Day, and it's the day that you atone for all your sins of the previous year, and you acknowledge, okay, I'm going to change things and make things right for the year to come. And the last major Jewish holiday or festival is Hanukkah. It's the one that roughly coincides with the Christian Christmas, and it's a winter festival celebrating a victory of Jewish people over, I believe, the Roman soldiers. Okay, so that's a couple of quick things about Judaism. We talked about a little bit in their history, who were the major founders: Abraham, and there's Isaac as well, and Moses was the major founder of Judaism. And major preacher. And we talked about a little bit of their history, the diaspora and what that meant, the destruction of Solomon's temple, and then we talked about their major beliefs and customs. Have a great day.